Alright, and welcome back, YouTube. It's been a while since I've done a video, but I'm going to be doing um, a new series, a pretty short series, but it'll be a couple of videos, where we're going to be looking at a replay of the 2002 Oakland Athletics season, the Moneyball season. Actually, this is the second recording I did. There was a slight issue with the first one, so I've already actually simulated the first month of the season, which is what this video was going to be for. But as far as that's concerned, went ahead and simulated the first month. What I'm going to be doing in this series is going to be looking at a month-to-month go through as far as the season's concerned and compare it with the historical results. I'm going to be using a game called Out of the Park Baseball 12, which is probably the best, or certainly one of the best, text-based baseball simulators out there. It's really great for people who want to play a game and, act like the GM, where you don't play out every play, but you kind of play the role of the GM. You watch things unfold, you assemble the team and watch things unfold. You can also play the role of the manager too, so if you want to handle the strategy and all of that, you can certainly do that too. As far as this is concerned, I've simulated the first month of the season already. Now, historically, Oakland actually didn't get off to quite as bad of a start as the movie Moneyball, the new film, which is, I'm calling this this series the Moneyball replay, because it's a replay of that season for the movie Moneyball starring Brad Pitt. Now, the movie, for Hollywood reasons, makes it sound like the Athletics got off to a terrible start. They really didn't get off to that bad of a start. At the end of April, they were only about 3 games back, and they had a 15-11 record, so they had a winning record through the end of April. May is actually when it really fell apart. About up till the last week of May, things were going really poorly for them. But the month of April was actually a decent month, 15-11, not great, not terrible. And I think the thing that the movie kind of loses out on it they do it for Hollywood reasons. They want to emphasize the point that Billy Beane, the GM, or Brad Pitt's character, had in shaping this team. But what the movie really misses out on is the fact that really the moves that they show in that movie, those couple of, very intelligent-looking moves and the mathematics and sabermetrics behind all of it, were really only a handful of moves, which did go in to fill several key losses that the team had suffered. But what the movie fails to really comment on is the fact that this team, this Oakland Athletics team, the key to their success for those years, the key to their playoff and dramatic success, was the fact that they, at the time anyway, they had 3 of the most effective pitchers in baseball. Now, I'm not going to get into the sabermetric side of looking at, how effective was Tim Hudson or Barry Zito or Mark Mulder. I'm going to rely on the flawed method of looking at wins and ERA, and I know that's not the most effective way to measure a pitcher. There are a lot of more advanced ways to measure a pitcher. But from a winning and losing standpoint, when these guys were on the mound, this team was phenomenal. For various reasons. But as far as the game is concerned, they dominated. They were called I believe they were called the Big Three at the time, and the movie doesn't even touch on it. And it's something that you can see today, too, in a lot of teams. I mean, the Philadelphia Phillies are extremely good, primarily because they've got the best pitching staff, or one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. The San Francisco Giants won the World Series a couple of years ago, not on their offense, not at all. It was because they had, at the time anyway, probably the best pitching staff in baseball. And if you go through, if you look throughout history, pitching wins games. And that's not really a surprise, but it's something that the movie doesn't touch on. It focuses on a couple of his key additions and a couple of the, more easy ways to point out the success or what Beane was doing. But I think what the movie really needs... Well, it's not going to do it for Hollywood reasons, but what it really should have at least mentioned at one point or another is when you have a great pitching staff, it doesn't matter if you lose phenomenal offensive players. You're going to be a great team. If you have dominant pitching, you are going to win games. You might not win 103 games, but you're going to be in contention if you have a great pitching staff. And the pitching staff of Barry Zito, Tim Hudson, and Mark Mulder during these years was one of the best big three pitching of all time. Now, as far as the simulation goes for the first month, the numbers kind of bear it out. You have on here Barry Zito at a 3.55 ERA, which is pretty good. He was 2-1. Tim Hudson had a phenomenal month, 5 wins, 1 loss, and a 1.48 ERA. And then Mark Mulder, another phenomenal month of a 1.39 ERA with a 3-1 record. One of the key contributors in the movie, Chad Bradford, is the setup man, has a good month with a 2.08 ERA. And Billy Koch was another important key that isn't really mentioned. I think, and I'll mention this in more detail in some of the later videos, but I think what Moneyball really doesn't address is the importance of the scouts. The Moneyball factor was addressing certain positions, certain limited, effective guys that being picked up, and Hollywood does a good job of maybe overemphasizing their importance. They were certainly important, but you do not have that team without great scouting and drafting. And thus far, I don't work in an MLB front office, but statistics play a very important part. A lot of teams have adopted those Moneyball principles, but it's not the only thing. Scouting is incredibly important, and building a effective core of young pitching for any small market club is incredibly important. If you look at the Milwaukee Brewers last year, they won like 96 games, and they did it really on the back of a very good pitching staff. You had Zach Greinke, former Cy Young winner, still a very good pitcher, got off to a rough start because of some injuries, but had a great year other than that last year. You had Giovanni Gallardo, another young, very good pitcher. Then they had Sean Markham, which, as bad as he did in the playoffs, had a phenomenal start to this season. Another very effective pitcher, definitely one of the better number 3 pitchers in baseball. Gallardo, one of the better number 1 or 2 pitchers in baseball. Same with Greinke. If you put Greinke at the number 2, he's probably at least the second best number 2 in baseball, if only because the Phillies' rotation is so stacked. If you put him as a number 1, he's still going to be in the top half of number 1 pitchers. And they really rode that pitching to the playoffs last year. As much as people talk about the offense, it was the pitching that got it done. Just as I mentioned with the Giants when they won the World Series, pitching wins ball games. Young pitching that you draft or trade for is the key. And what Billy Beane really got right in those 2000s was some phenomenal pitchers. And that's something that, like I said, the Moneyball movie doesn't even mention, and that was, without a doubt, the most important aspect to the Oakland Athletics' success in the early 2000s was pitching. And as much as you might say, well, there were small moves here or there, the movie focused on the smaller moves. That team was going to be a good team with the pitching. It was those other guys which turned them from a good team into a great team. But they were going to be good regardless because of the pitching that they had and the core that they still had even after those free agents were lost. But I will get into some more dialogue, more information, and look more at this game in a little bit more detail on the next video, which will cover the month of May. Like I said, this simulation, 14 and 12 in the month of April as opposed to 15 and 11 historically. So we'll look at that more in the next video in a couple of days.